ordering, as well as the B2G compliance requirements. These are the two new requirements announced by MDA for our add-on to be compliant with the InvoiceNow network. And I will also touch on the technical setup of the registration flow, the text mapping, as well as the automation scheduling functions. As you can see from this screen, IMDA has actually announced a phased mandatory adoption of InvoiceNow for all businesses. You can actually find this roadmap from IRA's website as well. So the latest deadline that they have given to all businesses are actually 2031. Of course, based on your company turnover, your deadline may be 2028 or 2029 or 2020 or 2030. So therefore, it is a matter of time that your businesses will need to be on board the InvoiceNow network. So what we have done at our end is that we have developed an add-on that helps our Business One customers to connect the Business One ERP system to InvoiceNow network to ensure a smooth submission of data that's to eliminate any duplicates data entry. Now, let me go through the C5 corner model. What this C5 corner model means is that it used to be only 4 corners, which means that it's only your supplier, your customer, and your company that's involved in the InvoiceNow network. However, with the latest announcement by IRAS will now be the 5th corner, which means that IRAS will also need to be the party that receive the data that you send and receive from your business partner. Your business partner can be customer or can be supplier. In fact, IRAS will also need the data submission for those non-PEPAL business partner, meaning those business partner, they are not in the InvoiceNow network, data will also need to be submitted to IRAS. Okay. So as you can see from these slides, it covers standard and non-PEPAL business partner. The standard one are the standard PEPAL exchange between the supplier and the buyer. A buyer will be, say for example, if you are buying something from your supplier, you are the buyer. But if you are selling something to your customer is the buyer, but you are the supplier, right? There are also another type of the invoices that you need to submit, which is invoices delivered via a non-PEPAL routes, which means that those invoices are not submitted through a PEPAL network. You can actually create such data in SAP Business One simply because your business partner are actually not non-PEPAL participants. So they send you the invoice. They could send you invoice via a soft copy or the hard copy, which you entered it manually in the SAP Business One. However, you will still need to submit this data to IRAS. Another type of the data that you need to submit will be Type C, which is aggregated cash sales from the B2C transactions. So a B2C transaction, such as the invoices that you actually send to end user or consumers, or transactions that you record in the POS system, these are actually considered cash sales transactions. You will need to submit this data to IRAS as well. Lastly, there is also another type of type F, which is aggregated data from the petty cash transaction. The petty cash transaction will cover transactions such as the petty cash claim submitted by your employees. So all of these transactions will need to be submitted to IRAS. Next, I will go through, this is our demo lifecycle. I will go through the creation of the purchase order, and I will also simulate the receipt of the sales order via InvoiceNow network. And I will also do a PO changes and cancellations so that your supplier will receive the changes notification and the cancellation notification. I will also be able to show you how do we do an order response, which means that you receive an order from your customer, you can actually respond to your customer via an order response. And you can also send an AI invoice as well as a credit note to your customer via InvoiceNow network. Then you will be able to receive the AP invoice and the AP credit notes via the InvoiceNow network. Okay. So what is the advanced ordering lifecycle? So advanced ordering lifecycle are actually the additional functions that our system support via the InvoiceNow network. For example, a buyer create a purchase order in SAP Business One. The buyer will then send this PO via InvoiceNow network. The sellers will then be able to receive this as a sales order instantly. And next, you will be able to do a real-time processing of the order changes and the cancellation, which means that if you want to make modification of the purchase order that you have sent through the InvoiceNow network, you can raise a PO change request as well as a cancellation. You can also raise a PO balance to inform your supplier what is the outstanding PO quantity that they have yet to deliver to you. You can also raise an order response to your as a seller. As a seller, when you receive an order from your customer, you can also respond to your customer via the acknowledgement of the receipt of the orders. So we actually call them an order response advanced capability. The order response comes with 4 different statuses. You can respond to your customer using the code AB, which is acknowledge, which means that you confirm the receipt of the order. You can also respond to your customer, telling them that you have accepted the order. And you can also respond to your customer to reject the order. And you can also specify a conditional accepted status, which means that you are going to propose some changes to your customer. In addition to the standard B2B transactions exchange, a B2B transaction exchange are the transaction between a normal companies that is in the private sector, which means that if you are in the private sector, you are sending your purchase order to your supplier and your supplier is non-government related. These are considered as B2B. However, there is also another requirements on the B2G, which means that if you deal with government sector, for example, you need to send some order to your customer, your customer is part of the government sector, then you will need to have some compliance. You will need to meet some compliance requirements announced by the government. So you need to have some mandatory fields, informations to be specified in SAP for you to indicate the AGD business units, the AGD vendor codes, as well as the mapping of the payment terms, because the government sector has a list of pre-approved payment terms that you must follow. So our add-on ensure that these standards are being observed and followed. When you receive an order from your customer, or when you send a purchase order to your supplier and the supplier send you an invoice, how do you know that you have received the documents? We will be able to have a window task scheduler to constantly read the pending transactions from the InvoiceNow network in order to inform and alert the users that there are pending documents for them to download it from the InvoiceNow network. You can imagine that the InvoiceNow network is something like a middleman, where you send the data to this middleman. The middleman will not inform the other party that there is documents pending. You will still need to have some mechanism to go into this middleman to retrieve the information. Therefore, our add-on is built in such a way that it can query the pending documents in the system, in the InvoiceNow network, so that you can take action to import the data into your system. So these are some of the highlights of our features in our SAP Business One add-on. we are able to allow the users to automatically retrieve the PayPal ID from the InvoiceNow network. Just for your information, InvoiceNow was used to call PayPal network. So they have changed the naming to InvoiceNow network. And we also allows you to set a different text code mapping because the InvoiceNow network only accept standard text code that is being agreed by IRES. So I understand that SAP Business One is flexible to allow the users to use any code that they want in terms of the GST setup. However, in order for you to comply with the IRES requirements, you need to perform some mapping of the text code. And our add-on also incorporate a functions to do a pre-flight validation, which means that it allows us to validate the documents rules before sending the documents to prevent the access point failures. Just imagine that there are some mandatory requirements such as information that is required, which you have not entered in the system. If you send this information, incomplete information to access point, you will receive a failure notification. But our system is able to catch this error before sending the documents to the InvoiceNow network. We also allows the users to do a batch uploading of the data, which means that you do not really need to send document by documents to the InvoiceNow network. You can send the documents at the end of the month or at the end of a quarter to IRES or to your businesses. In terms of IRES, the requirements will be before the next quarterly submission of your GST report. Just need to ensure that all the data that you have recorded in your system are being sent to IRES. Okay, so I will now switch over to the system to show you how do we do such a functions. Again, I will be doing a demonstration of all these processes. Okay. Let me just switch over to the system now. Okay, before I continue, just want to confirm, is there anyone having issues seeing my screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. All right. Okay, so I hope there isn't any blocking on the screen again. All right. Okay, so let me just continue. Now, this is a user interface of SAP Business One, which most of you are already very familiar. So I will be focusing on a few setup functions. First, I will start with the setup. There is this setup functions that we can click on it. See whether is there any problem with this thing now? None? Okay. Oh, it's just a bit slow. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, this setup is the integration setup that we need to specify when we first set up the system. Our access point vendor partner is called DataPost. It's one of the authorized access point vendor for InvoiceNow network in Singapore. So we actually connect our add-on to DataPost via the API call. So we will be able to help you to connect your company UEN number to DataPost and register your PayPal ID with them. Okay, and we will also help you to activate the InvoiceNow C5 network. However, we can only help you because the activation of the C5 require a COP pass. Okay, so we will guide you step by step on how to activate it in our implementation. So this is the setup. So in this setup window, we have some information that allows you to specify the setting that allows you to specify the behavior of the add-on, such as to validate before sending the data to the access point and auto send the AR invoices or AR credit notes the moment you add the documents instead of waiting for the end of the month, then you send. And there are also some setup of the default item. This is for us to do the mapping of the information that is required by InvoiceNow network. We will also be able to import the data as a draft document so that you will not import the data as a posted document in SAP Business One, where you have no chance of verifying the correctness of the data before it get posted. So we have similar setting under the AP, and this is the alerts functions that we can let the user set up to alert the users on the pending transactions that is sitting in the InvoiceNow for the users to download into the system. Okay, so this is the setup window. Let me go to the company setting to ensure that we are properly registered under the InvoiceNow network. So in SAP Business One, our InvoiceNow network registration informations are found under company details. When we go to the company details, you will be able to see that there is a GRN number, which is our InvoiceNow information. Okay, you can verify whether your company is under the InvoiceNow network by right-click on this screen and select InvoiceNow, and you can retrieve the BP PayPal info to ensure that your company is being registered with the InvoiceNow. So you should be able to see statuses like this, whether the C5 is being activated. So you can actually activate InvoiceNow without activating C5. That is in the past, but now you will need to activate both InvoiceNow as well as C5 activation. All right. So this is the way that you can verify that your company is being registered in InvoiceNow network. Hello, can you still hear me? Okay, great. Okay, so I will just continue if you have no more issues. Okay, right. So I will continue. This is the first step that we need to ensure that our own company is being registered as InvoiceNow participants. Next, we will go to the business partner window. In the business partner window, we will be able to check whether our customer is registered as InvoiceNow. So what happened is that you will need to get your customer or supplier to provide their InvoiceNow registration ID so that you can actually enter it into the system here. For example, I have a customer that is registered with InvoiceNow. So they have this ID number, there is a GRN number, which is their InvoiceNow PayPal ID. So I can verify whether they are in the network by going to the InvoiceNow and retrieve the BP PayPal info. Okay, so same thing, you will see something like this. You can also make sure that you can go to the InvoiceNow and retrieve the BP GSC registration. Okay, so they will also give you some GSC registration number, and in terms of the C5 registration, the information will be maintained over here. Okay, so you will notice that the PayPal ID is a little bit different from the C5 ID, even though they are both in InvoiceNow network. So do take note that you need to register separately for C5 as well as InvoiceNow because they will give you different ID. Okay, so your ID will be something like SGUEN something, followed by your UEN number. Then your C5 will be C5UU ID, followed by your UEN number. So this will be the standard format at this moment. Okay, so this is how you can check whether your business partner are actually a InvoiceNow network registrant. And the ability to check for the validity of the InvoiceNow network status for a business partner is one of the mandatory requirements for our add-on to be IRSP accredited. So just not forgetting to mention that our add-on is already accredited by IMDA as the IRSP accredited solutions. Okay. Next, I will create a purchase order by sending this purchase order via InvoiceNow network to our supplier. So most of you will be quite familiar with the ability to send out a purchase order, which is under the purchase order function here. And you will just need to choose the supplier. who is already a PeppleNow network participants, and you will then enter the item that you want to send over, and you will enter a vendor reference number. Okay, so I will leave the vendor reference number empty at this moment. So I just enter the amount here. All right. Then I will try to click on this add and view. Okay, so this is a standard way of entering the purchase order in the system. No different from your normal way of entering the data. Now, I have not activated the auto send documents to InvoiceNow network. Therefore, the document now stay in your SAP Business One at this moment. So what happens if I want to send it over to the InvoiceNow network, I want to send it right away, I can right click on this document. There is now an additional function for us to choose, which is called InvoiceNow. Again, you can retrieve the PP Peppol info from here as well, or alternatively, you can also select Send InvoiceNow documents. The system will then start to do some validation check to ensure that the information required are all entered. So you notice that at the bottom of the screen, there is a red color error saying that there is some missing information. The either buyer reference number or the purchase reference must be provided. So this means that you need to at least put in some reference number over here. We can just put in our my PO. For example, anything, so long as there's some reference information here. Then you click on update, and you can then right click and then select Invoice Now and send Invoice Now document again. The system will then connect to the data post access point, and using the API, it's in real time. And the system will also do a validation of the data before sending it to them. And once it's been successful, you will be able to see that the document successfully sent information at the bottom. And you will also notice that on the right-hand side here, there is a unique transaction reference number as well as transaction date that is being returned by the InvoiceNow. So our program is able to go and retrieve the transaction reference and the transaction date to inform the user that, hey, this document has been successfully sent over to InvoiceNow network. All right. Next, how do I ensure that this document is really being sent to the IRS also? Okay, let me just refresh it and we'll see. Oh, okay, so you can see there is a status here. At the bottom right-hand side here, there is an IRS status. There's a status info. There's a IRS transaction ID. Okay, at this moment, these three are still empty. All right, these three are still empty. Unfortunately, InvoiceNow network will not inform you of the status immediately. You will need to wait a few minutes. Sometimes can be up to 15 minutes before you can receive the update status of the IRS. So what we can do is this. We can close this window, and we have a functions that allows the users to check for the statuses. You can go to the InvoiceNow export eDoc. You can select purchasing documents. This one is you can select all documents. Oh, sorry, no, not sending this document. Should be this import, send. Let me see, it's orders. No, that's not that one. Sorry. The PO, I was wrong to say that the PO there should be an IRS. There shouldn't be any IRS information about the purchase order because purchase order is not a GST document yet. I will go through the GST document later on when we receive the invoice. Okay? So we won't be able to see the IRS information in the purchase order. Okay? But now let's switch our angle. We have already sent, we as a seller, we as a buyer, we send the purchase order to our supplier. Now, if I am a seller, I will retrieve the order into my system. Okay, so what I will do is I will just go to Invoice Now, import eDocs. I will select received and I will select order. Order, changes or cancellation. Okay. So I just leave the rest of the selection empty so that it can load everything, and I click on next. I will be able to see that there is one purchase order. the second line are the one that have been successfully sent. The first line is the one that you have not received yet. All right. So 666 is the one that I've tested today. I've already received it, but the 667 is the other one that I have not received yet. So I will double click on this line. Okay. The system will then load the detail of the data from the file that I received. Okay, let me just maximize this window. You will see that the system allows you to choose which numbering series that you want to post to. You can also select the customer code. The system is able to use the sender ID to identify the correct customer. So in this customer, this particular card code is a customer because it is a customer receive orders. Okay, customer code. Then I have this. So my customer sent me an order. So I have this customer code retrieved. I can specify the contact person. I can also specify the salesperson. And as all of you would have known by now that SAP Business One allows us to create documents using item type or service type. So we can also change where to service if you do not want to use item type. If you can still remember, the PO that I have created just now was an item type purchase order. I was using a non-inventory item called service, but it is still an item type document. So therefore, the system is able to identify that that is an item type document for me. And the system will also allow you the ability to change some of the information that you want. So I will click on next. This is a wizard that allows you to import data. And from here, the system is able to allow you to copy this from a base document. Because we are only receiving orders, you could have actually issued a sales quotation to the customer before. But sales quotation is currently not supported in InvoiceNow networks. Therefore, we can't send sales quotation. So, but we can still link the order to the sales quotation by selecting this select functions. Okay. And the system is able to also link for me the service, the item codes automatically if I have the same item codes set up in my system. Okay, there is some back-end logic that the system will do a mapping to select the item code for you. But if you want to choose a different item code or you want to use a different GR account number, you can change it yourself as well, depending on your situation. All right. If you leave the rest empty, the system will just use the default setting. Then I will click on import and the system will ask you whether you want to import the data. You will answer yes. Then the system will start to create a draft document because in my setup, I have actually tell the system not to create the document as a poster document, but create it as a draft document. I will then review this draft document by clicking on this arrow pointing to this document. And it will open up these draft documents and you have a chance to verify whether the data is correct or not. All right. So you click on add and view and click OK. And you answer yes. Now the order is being added into the system immediately. All right. So let me switch it back to the PowerPoint slides on the process. What we have to verify what we have completed just now. We have completed the creation of the purchase order. We have also completed the receipt of the sales order. Now, let's go through the PO changes and the cancellation also. Okay. Now, you notice that I have already received, as a seller, I have already received and confirmed the order. All right. So what happens if the buyer want to make some changes to the purchase order? Our system support the PO changes. Okay. So let me just close this window and now we switch our position, we as a seller. Let's go back to the purchase order and let's open up the purchase order that I've created just now. Okay, let me just move this away. Let's just use this previous record button to open up the purchase order. I can then right click and select invoice now. And I have a few options. You can either raise a PO cancellation or a PO change or a PO balance. PO cancellation is to inform your seller, the supplier, that you want to cancel the PO. Okay, but it's up to them whether they can they allow you to cancel, right? Then you have this PO change as well. Let's go to the PO change first. Okay. Now this purchase PO change screen will load the data of the purchase order. Just hold on for a while. It's a bit slow here. Okay, so you can actually make some PO changes if you need to. The data, these are the original data. Okay, now you can add a new item. Okay, or you can change the quantity. Okay, let's say I want to change from 1 to 3. I will need to send the request first, and this will send this request to the supplier. Take note that these documents, the system record these changes first. It does not make changes to your purchase order yet. Okay, it does not, because it is waiting for your supplier to confirm that they can accept your changes. Okay, so you can see that there's a new quantity. I have already sent this request. This request has been sent over to Pepper. Okay, now you notice this purchase order quantity is not changed. Okay, still remain as it is. So we don't change this purchase order. We wait for the supplier to inform us whether they have accepted or not. So let's just close it. Now switch our angle. We are the supplier now. So we will go to the import functions. I will then select order changes and cancellation, and I will click on next. I will see that there is an additional request for the order change. Okay, so what I will do is I will double click on this. I will then review to say whether do I accept it or not. So if I say I want to accept it, I will just say accept it. Then I will send a response. And I say yes. Okay. Now, this acceptance will also make changes to your order, which is the sales order, because you accepted the data, which is number 3 here. Okay, so you can see number 3 here is being accepted. The changes is really being committed. Okay, now let's switch our angle. We will now be the supplier. Okay, let's go back and we will then select to import the order response from our customer, from our supplier. Is a order response. Is it order response for our customer? Okay, so let's click on next. This is the order response. Okay, from our supplier. So we double click on this. This success is unticked, means I have not really received it yet. I have not really committed this thing. So this order response, they say they have already committed the changes. So they say, okay, then what I will do is at my end, I will just click on this commit change. You don't need to go to the purchase order to make the changes yourself. You will need to establish these changes. So you just click on commit changes. And yes. Then if you open up the purchase order, you'll notice that the changes is also being committed to the purchase order. Okay. So let's just recap what we have done just now. We have actually created a purchase order. We have done the receipt of the sales order, and we have raised the PO changes to change the quantity. And we have also witnessed how the order response comes in to commit the changes that our customer actually requested. Okay. So in the interest of time, I will quickly go through the sending of ER invoice and the sending of AP invoice functions. Okay. Now, just imagine yourself as a seller. Okay, I have a sales order just now, right? So I have also committed the changes. I accepted the request or change of the sales order. Okay, so I will call up the sales order just now, and I will turn this sales order into an AR invoice. Okay, So turning it to an AI invoice is a standard SAP Business One function. Just copy this into an AI invoice. Okay. And then I will just click on Add and View and OK. Okay. Now, if I want to send this to InvoiceNow, send it back to them, I will then be able to right click on it and select InvoiceNow. It's the same process by selecting this InvoiceNow documents. But what happens if your customer is really not an InvoiceNow participant? You only want to submit the GST. What you do is you just select this GST InvoiceNow submission only. You can just use this function to submit to IRS without submitting the document through InvoiceNow network. If I choose this option, then it will submit to both. If I choose this option, it will submit only to your supply or customer. If I choose this option, it will only submit to IRS. So these are the difference between these three. So our system is able to allow you to choose one of these three actions. So for me, I will just use this function to simulate the process of sending the data to both parties. Now, again, system do a pre-flight validation for me because I have a missing customer reference number. So I just do some customer reference number entering over here. And then I update it. And I right click on it and I select Invoice Now and I will select Send Invoice Now Documents. Okay, so the system will do a series of validation of the file and they will tell me that the document is successfully sent. Okay, now let's take a look at the information. There's a view user-defined fields. Okay. There is this PEPL unit ID information here, but there's no IRS information for now. Okay. We just wait a while. Okay. Perhaps do a few refresh. Okay, so it doesn't come out. It doesn't matter. We can come back and check later. So next, we will then import this as an invoice into my system. So just imagine yourself as a seller. Now you're a buyer. So just now the one sending the invoice is the seller. So now I am a buyer. I go to this import eDoc function. I will then be able to select invoices. You can see from the drop-down list here, there are other documents. We can also do the same for credit notes. So we select invoices, we click on next. There's this success unchecked, means that you have not been imported yet. So I just double click on this. Okay, now the same process appear again, just like just now when I try to import the order. Okay, so the system will do an auto mapping of the vendor code for me, and all the informations are being selected automatically defaulted to the system based on the data in the InvoiceNow network. And I click on next. And you will see the detailed item here as well. And the system is able to do an auto matching of the AP invoice based on the purchase order, if the document flow are already inside the invoice now. So just if you remember correctly, just now we raised a purchase order 667, okay, into the InvoiceNow network, and the customer accepted the order via the InvoiceNow network, and is the customer, the supplier accepted the purchase order, and the supplier actually used the purchase order to convert into an AI invoice and send it via the InvoiceNow network. And when I import this invoice into my system as an AP invoice, system is able to identify that this document is actually linked to the purchase order documents, and it will link all the data automatically for me. Next, I will just click on import and I say yes. The system again create a draft document. What I will do is I just click on the arrow pointing to the draft documents. I will then be able to add this document. After reviewing everything is okay, then I will be able to add this document. Okay. Now, adding this document has actually is not complete because you need to send this document to IRES. Okay, so what you need to do is you have to right click and you select Invoice Now, and you need to send the um, Invoice Now GST Invoice Now submission. Document not eligible for Invoice Now. Let me see whether is it Invoice Now related. Let me see this document data here. Oh, okay. The vendor code, I have not set up a C5 PayPal ID uh, yet. Therefore, the system identified that this particular vendor is not Invoice Now Invoice Now related. Okay, let me just change it back. If I remember correctly, I did actually did the setup previously. Let me see, where is it now? Okay, so let me just go to the customer and then I just retrieve the Invoice Now C5 information here. Okay, just put it here. Update. Okay, let's just go back to the AP invoice. Right click, Invoice Now, and GST Invoice Now network submission. Oh, still not eligible. Okay, so I will need to check on what are the settings that is required for this Invoice Now network submission, GST submission. Okay. Okay, now, but let's look at the AI invoice. Just now we have sent over the AI invoice. So we just look at this AI invoice first. Receive invoices. Next. Sorry, send invoices. Okay. Now, if you look at this send invoices, when you use this document, this particular function to retrieve the document that you have sent over, you will also be able to see that there is some information about the IRS. Okay, this one, you will scroll all the way to the right-hand side. There is an IRS transaction ID and the IRS status successful or not successful. So long as you see there is a status successful and you see that there is an acknowledgement ID given by IRS over here, it means that your data is really successfully sent over to IRS. Okay. Now, that will complete the whole flow of our Invoice Now add-on. Of course, this particular function is the one that you will use to do a batch sending at the end of the month or at the end of the week, if depending on how frequently you want to send it over. Okay. Now let's go back to the PowerPoint slides. I will go to the last slides, which is the commercial. Okay. Now, how much does it cost for you to join this Invoice Now network? IRES has already mentioned that data sent to IRES is currently free of charge until 2027. Okay, so all data sent over to IRES are free of charge. However, there is some software cost for non-maintenance customer, but for a maintenance customer, the software cost of $4,000 is waived for this year. So in other words, if you engage our service to install this add-on for you, and if you are our TWM maintenance customer, there won't be a software charge for you. However, there is still a one-time yearly maintenance cost of $1,800 per company. This is to ensure that the data or the add-on is being updated and continuously to align with the latest requirements by IMDA in terms of the Invoice Now requirements. And in addition to this, there will also be a $2,000 setup charge, which includes the user onboarding, the training, and the setup of the system, and including the UAT. This charge is also per company. And the last charge will be the B2B document charges. So as I mentioned that the data sent over to IRES is free of charge. However, if you want to send the documents to your supplier or customer, the first 3,000 documents are currently free for our customers. any document sent above 3,000 documents will be charged per 1,000 document block at $380. So in other words, if you find that your supplier or customer is not a PayPal Now network participant, you will not need to send the documents. Then you will not use this 3,000 documents allowance. Okay. So if that means if you can use our add-on to continuously send data to IRS to be compliant, but you do not really need to send the documents to your customer or supplier unless you are being required to do so. For example, when government announced that documents sent over to the government sector need to go through InvoiceNow, then you will have no choice. And if your customer is from government sector, you have no choice but to send over the documents to them. All right. Any document that you receive is not chargeable. So you can receive your documents from your customer. Maybe you receive a purchase order from your customer, or maybe you receive an AI invoice from your supplier. These are non-chargeable. So the charges is only for documents that you send out from SAP Business One. Okay. Now, this is just the conclusions. So you can wait while you can wait and see. You can adopt a wait and see approach. But of course, it's the earlier that you adopt InvoiceNow, the better it is, because you can then experience the sending of the data seamlessly to IRS without the need to re-enter all the transaction into the access point portal manually one by one in order for you to send data to IRS. Okay. Now, I think we still have about, so sorry about, we still have about 4 minutes left due to the problem that we encountered earlier. But if you can, we can stretch for another 10 minutes if some of you are still available. Right? So I can see that there are some questions on the chat. Okay, so let me just answer it. Okay, so I just answered it from the latest questions first. So Edward asked about the 300